there are big reasons to smile lately for Dragon Quest fans. While never achieving the kind of success many other RPGs enjoyed in the West, Dragon Quest's fanbase outside the land of the rising sun is growing. Dragon Quest's first foray onto the Famicom in 1986 is really where the idea of the JRPG began. It's one of the most important games ever created, laying the groundwork for the role-playing game market on consoles. With the wonderful character designs of Akira Toriyama of Dragon Ball fame, as well as the musical genius of Koichi Sugiyama, Yuji Horí's Dragon Quest would become an RPG institution in Japan. It's pretty easy for me to admit that I love the Dragon Quest games, and it's a series that is a lot of fun to collect for. The traditional charm of Dragon Quest has always been appealing, from its simple battle mechanics to its melancholy stories that don't feel the need to hold your hand to see them through. It's a series that's always stuck to what works, and if you've played a Dragon Quest title, you'll know a good deal about what to expect for your next one, no matter which you decide to play. Even though the series has gone through its droughts in this part of the globe, fans of Dragon Quest in the West are passionate folks who are finally being heard by the powers that be at Square Enix. For a series that sticks so close to tradition as Dragon Quest, it's the spin-offs that like to shake things up and try different things. And wow, there are a lot of them. From the characters' appearances in Fortune Street, the real estate development board game on the Wii, to the dungeon-crawling adventures found in Tornico: The Last Hope, or even the surprisingly great motion gameplay found in Dragon Quest Swords. Dragon Quest spin-offs have a lot of fun with their source material. They're different enough from the main games, but they still hold that whimsical charm the series presents so well. With Square Enix taking a bit of a chance with the series in the West again, we're able to experience not only the series in entirely new ways, with almost the whole catalog of the main games available on mobile devices, but we're also getting a chance to at least try these different spin-offs, like the hack-and-slash Dynasty Warrior-style Dragon Quest Heroes and its upcoming sequel. And I've really been enjoying the 3DS remake of Dragon Quest VII, and I'm absolutely looking forward to the 8th game's port on the 3DS as well. But it's probably the most radical step Dragon Quest has taken in years that's really exciting. A little bit of Minecraft, a little bit of Zelda, and a whole lot of Dragon Quest come together to make one of the coolest games of 2016. Dragon Quest Builders, and it's an excellent way to wrap up the series' 30th anniversary celebrations across the globe. Dragon Quest Builders is a building game, but it's also an adventure game. You gather resources and items to craft furniture, blocks, and other things to build small towns. And you can create things really wherever and however you like. At first glance, it may look a bit like Minecraft with its block stacking and inventory HUD, but there's a good bit more to it than that. It is easy to make a comparison to Dragon Quest Builders versus Minecraft, but they really are inherently different gameplay experiences. Sure, both games involve smashing things up to gather resources in order to build different things from equipment to furniture. Both titles have hunger you need to be mindful of, and traveling at night can be a difficult stroll to be sure with different monsters on the prowl. But Dragon Quest Builders is much more than just a slime craft. It manages to be both a fantastic creative building game and a wonderful example of a Dragon Quest game in its own right. But to set the stage for this crafting adventure, we actually have to go back a bit. In the original Dragon Quest, the realm of Alefgard needs saved from the sinister Dragonlord who's kidnapped the Princess of Tantegel Castle and stolen the Sphere of Light. The task of saving the Kingdom of Alefgard falls to the newly arrived descendant of Alefgard's greatest hero, Erdrick. It's a long quest filled with many battles and trials. The descendant of Erdrick visits the towns across Alefgard, gathering information and discovering tools and buying items to crush the Dragonlord's army. When he eventually reaches the villain's lair at Charlotte Castle and steals into the Dragonlord's secret chambers, he's presented with an option. The Dragonlord offers the scion of the legendary hero a chance to rule over half the world alongside him. In Dragon Quest, choosing no and fighting the Dragonlord is the only way to beat the game. But for the curious, what happens if you say yes? What would happen if you accept the Dragonlord's offer of power unbound? While that choice in the original game forces you into the only real game over, forcing you to reset the console, Dragon Quest Builders explores the idea that the hero, accepting the Dragonlord's offer, essentially sets in motion the events that lead to the Dragonlord plunging the realm into darkness and eventually sealing away humanity's ability to build. The game even opens with the Dragonlord making that offer to the descendant of Erdrick. It's just the first of many throwbacks to the game that started it all, and it's an interesting backdrop to build, no pun intended, a game off of. It also helps explain the story for players who maybe haven't made their way through the grindfest that is the original Dragon Quest. You are the builder, awakened from a shallow grave by the goddess Rubis, who bestows into you and your back-sassy attitude the power to create. Your goal? rebuild Alefgard, and set the stage for the next hero to arrive and defeat the Dragonlord. You are not the hero, you're just a builder. You don't get stronger by fighting monsters, and it's not your place to take down the great evil. Your role is to get the people of Alefgard building again. You know, construction, infrastructure, lift all boats, all that jazz. So how does all the building work? You can't rebuild civilization out of nothing, so you'll smash up dirt, rocks, trees, and hunt monsters to gather fur and other resources to build not only the blocks to make walls and floors, but also equipment and cozy amenities. You'll start off by learning the building basics, like combining grass and twigs to make straw beds and doors, and eventually learn how to make hammers and axes to harvest tougher materials to make the fruits of your labor even better. Everything you make is created at different crafting workstations, from simple tree stumps in the woods and masonry workshops, all the way to forges and welding benches. Material gathering isn't all just smash them and craft them, as many items necessary to build more complicated products will need to be processed from raw materials, such as making cord from bits of ivy or stripping lumber into usable planks of wood. To rebuild Alefgard, you'll travel to different corners of the kingdom to establish settlements, each of which were towns from the first game in the series. The towns and regions are divided into 4 different chapters, and you're given a banner from Rubus during each chapter that, once planted, brings a small amount of light to the town, attracting straggling citizens who will want to move in. As you complete tasks and fend off monster attacks for your town, the beam of light shines more and more folks will move in. You'll also be rescuing people from the wilderness, and there are hidden characters you may run into as well who are looking for a place to shack up. The residents will give you quests to help you brainstorm ideas for new creations and buildings, and also take a good ribbing from the legendary builder, who is not known to hold his tongue from a cutting remark or two. You can rebuild the towns in any way you really see fit, but there are some restrictions. But they're restrictions that don't so much hold you back creatively, but try to keep you from coloring too far outside the lines. First, there's the literal lines in the form of blueprints people living in your town will give you with their idea of a room or structure they'd like you to make. You can place them on the ground and then fill in the spaces as the blueprint says. Typically, a room made from a blueprint will be a way for the game to teach you a new room recipe. Rooms that you can build have a certain effect on your builder and your residents. Workshop rooms allow your friends to build furniture and makes the equipment you use more durable, while better sleeping quarters increase residents' max HP so they can take a few extra hits for you while defending your town from the Dragonlord's army. A room must have walls at least 2 blocks high, some fashion of illumination, and a door. They can be as big as you like or as cozy, but a room will count as destroyed if any of these core things are removed. Also keep in mind that anything you want the game to recognize for a room recipe or for points must be no higher than 2 blocks up. You're free to place items wherever you like. As long as you remember those requirements, you're all set. There's all sorts of kitchens, bathhouses, workshops, torture chambers, all sorts of different rooms that you can design. You'll discover a lot of these combinations on your own as you place different objects in rooms, as the blueprints only offer you a sampling of what you can build and how to build it. And after you build a blueprint, you can tear it down and build that room another way, since the room's function is based on the objects within it rather than the layout. If you're looking for building inspiration, sometimes your friends will tell you ideas for things that are completely optional to create, and some blueprints are rewards for completing side quests or found out in the wild. The real restriction in my view, however, comes from the size of your town. Each chapter is fairly lengthy, with several different islands and areas to explore, but your main town for each chapter is fairly small. You're free to build rooms around your base, but for the citizens to recognize it and use it, all your rooms and furniture need to be within the glowing light of Rubus. Once you get an idea for how big a room needs to be to furnish it pretty well, you'll be planning town layouts pretty easily. But as long as you keep your town within the light, you can do whatever you want. This is probably a good time to mention leveling up your base. As you build rooms, you'll earn points. Points are tallied by adding a base value for the room type, as well as the values of the objects placed in them. Obviously, bigger or fancier objects are worth more points, but items placed outside of rooms don't count towards your base level, so they're just for aesthetics. Raising your base's level increases the HP and recovery rate of your residents, and it's also essential for completing quests relating to the status of your town. The only problem with those quests, though, is that I was already at the level they wanted me to build the base up to before they even gave me the quest to do it, basically just completing the quest before the conversation even ends. This is really because it's way too easy to build your base level. Once you learn how to make cladding or flooring kits to easily swap common earth blocks with more attractive ones, you'll start raking in the points, and some objects you can find and bring back into your town are worth an obscene amount of points. I would have really liked to see the gap between levels much wider than it is, because it's not unreasonable to max out your base level pretty quickly. Each chapter of Dragon Quest Builders tasks you with the revitalization of a different town in Alefgard, and not just by rebuilding the cities and towns the Dragonlord's army have destroyed, but also by clearing away the perpetual darkness that has left Alefgard benighted. As people move into your town, they'll give you quests that unfold the story. From learning about the last days of Cantland to the resistance against the Dragonlord in Cole, you'll have a different set of missions in each region to help free the realm of Alefgard from the Dragonlord's grip. And the story's actually pretty cool. For a game that's based on the earliest JRPG, Builders takes the story from Dragon Quest and spins a melancholy-coated yarn about the betrayal of the descendant of Erdrick. Arguably, there's not a lot of source material there, but since each town in Dragon Quest had unique attributes, each region's chunk of the plot and the goals of each chapter feel different enough to entice you to keep playing. The builder works out a lot of recipes for items on their own when you find new materials, but some are learned over the course of the story, either characters discovering details of an object's design in old books and notes, or brainstorming sessions to dream up new tools. Since you'll be learning how to make new creations as you journey to revive Alefgard, the game nicely sets a pace that entices you to keep playing. It's a lot of fun to see the light bulb go off over the builder's head and see what he's come up with, though I do wish there was a sort of alchemy pot style akin to Dragon Quest VIII, where you can just throw items together and see if they make anything at all. That's something I like about Minecraft, where the game doesn't exactly tell you how to make items. You kind of have to figure it out on your own and remember it the next time you need to build it. Dragon Quest is famous for its monsters, commonly recycled throughout many of the games. Since you don't gain experience or otherwise get stronger from combat, fighting monsters becomes an action of either self-defense or hunting for resources that only the monsters drop. It is a nice diversion from building sometimes, and you'll be spending a lot of time in the wilderness fighting off enemies while you're gathering resources and completing quests. Monsters not only constantly appear near your town, but at certain points in the story, the Dragonlord will send his forces en masse to mangle your municipality. Monsters can wreck your town if you're not careful, so building rooms and armories that make your townsfolk stronger and building yourself better weapons is key to dispatching the monsters quickly. However, the combat isn't exactly amazing. You don't fight monsters in the typical Dragon Quest turn-based style, of course, but instead, with sword spin and all, it's actually a bit like Zelda. The biggest issue is that you don't have a lot of reach with your weapons, and the only ranged attacks you can really do are limited to items that don't do a lot of damage. I found myself constantly running into enemies to get close enough to hit them, and while you can work some of them into a corner with some nicely timed hits, it's easy to get lost in the fray when there are a lot of fisticuffs flying. You do get used to the combat pretty quickly, and it never lasts long enough per monster to be too annoying. The camera is also its own issue, and it doesn't help with gauging clearance between the builder and the monsters. It also falls apart in tight places, so don't go building any roofs or rooms on top of your buildings unless they're pretty high up. Minecraft's first-person view was perfect for those situations, and I do kind of wish builders included an option to view things like that, because it gets really weird in caves, too. When you sleep, sometimes you'll dream. Seen from the eyes of the descendant of Erdrick from the original Dragon Quest, these dreams give you a glimpse at life before the Dragonlord stole the light from the sky and sealed the power of creation from the humans. They're fun little scenes that fans of the original game will get a kick out of, but if you've never even played a Dragon Quest game, they do help build the world of Alefgard and flesh out some of the story. As a longtime Dragon Quest fan, I really appreciate these little scenes. Not only are they full of nostalgia for fans like me, but they show that Dragon Quest Builders doesn't have to take itself too seriously. Not that Dragon Quest really ever has. Dragon Quest Builders' writing is hilarious, and the builders' japes never fall flat, and the townsfolk give it right back to them too. Everyone has their own little personality and impact on the plot, and while there's always a few standouts, you grow to really like the people who move into your base. But the story is also dramatic in ways that Dragon Quest does really well. It's been drilled into us that we are not the hero from the outset of our adventure, but as you fight against the Dragonlord and revive the regions of Alefgard, the lines between obligation and responsibility blur. Your obligation is to set the stage for the true hero to come forth and put the Dragonlord to the sword, but your responsibility, and in a way your moral obligation, maybe shouldn't stop there. It's a quandary that, yes, the game sort of solves for you, but even the characters' discussions on how Alefgard landed itself into this bleak state are fascinating tidbits of plot and world building. As far as story and plot progress go, everything is nicely paced, but each chapter builds up in similar ways while still introducing new mechanics. From treating the sick, to adventuring with a party of masked buffoons, to even revitalizing the very earth itself. Dragon Quest Builders never feels too repetitive. There are a lot of secrets and fun things to find and learn outside of the story-driven stuff, and since you really do get to build things however you like, I think fans of more sandbox open-world games will still enjoy it. After the first chapter is completed, you'll unlock Terra Incognita, the game's free build mode. With tons of extra building options not available in the main story's chapters, Terra Incognita is probably the closest to Minecraft that Builders comes. More islands in Terra Incognita open as you clear other chapters in the story, and by completing challenges in each chapter, you'll unlock new things to build in the free build mode as well. You can play and build as much as you like in Terra Incognita and even share your creations online for other players to bring into their islands as well. It's a lot of fun to see how other players build their buildings, and is great inspiration for people like me who constantly never seem to be very good at these types of games. There's a lot to do, especially once you've unlocked a few things, and there's no real boundaries to where you can build your base. I like the Terra Incognita mode, and there's a lot of fun to be had with it, but the story mode is what really drives me to play Dragon Quest Builders. And completing the chapter's challenges really helps give the game a little bit of extra replay value. I do wish the items you can build in later chapters or even Terra Incognita could be made and used in earlier chapters, but unfortunately that's not an option. Just like how Minecraft's appeal is in the building things however you like, so too is it in Dragon Quest Builders, but the liberty to build is much more accessible in Terra Incognita. The big thing I wish for in Terra Incognita though would be a random world area that's procedurally generated similar to Minecraft. Everything in Builders, in both story mode and Terra Incognita, is handmade, which makes perfect sense for Alefgard and the story mode and everything, but in the free build area, a random world could add even more to the long-term playability. But by sharing creations online and seeing what others made and all the different things that you can do in Terra Incognita, creating your own adventures is still a lot of fun, no matter how the world was made. Minecraft's first-person perspective lends itself very well to a 3D construction game, and the third-person camera of Dragon Quest Builders takes some getting used to. I mentioned before how awful it can be in tight places, but in the open, it's pretty easy to get a good view of the beautiful landscape or see around your base. And the game does a good job of showing you where items can be placed with a reticle. But if you're a veteran Minecrafter, the perspective might take a little getting used to. Dragon Quest Builders does a lot of things right. I've never been too crazy about sandbox-style games because they've always felt so big. For someone like me who struggled to find a course in games like Minecraft, Dragon Quest Builders manages to pull you in quickly and create a game that wants you to build and rebuild whatever you can think of. While it makes me nostalgic for the older Dragon Quest titles, Builders does a fantastic job with a simple plot about how much a single choice could affect the world, and it tells it in a way that is inherently Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest Builders may give you some lines to color in, but I think every player will make something a little bit different. Each of their rooms, buildings, and towns are their own creations, and after you build a few things, it becomes pretty easy to forget that there were ever restrictions at all. Dragon Quest Builders may not be a Minecraft killer, but it really doesn't need to be. But it is more than an Akira Toriyama coat of paint on a typical Minecraft clone. It's a creative experience, but a darn good Dragon Quest game, all bundled up into one adorable package.